In a world where power and wealth seemed to rule everything, one millionaire believed his dominance extended even to the wildest of creatures. He owned a lion, fierce, untouchable, feared by all. Confident and arrogant, he made a public challenge. No one can approach my lion, let alone take him from me. But then, out of the shadows of poverty and hardship, a street boy appeared. With nothing to his name but courage and a pure heart, he did something no one saw coming. And what happened next left even the cold hearted millionaire in stunned silence. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the rest of this unbelievable story. Vincent Marlowe wasn't just rich, he was the kind of man who needed everyone to know it. His wealth wasn't quiet or humble, it was loud, towering, and as untouchable as the marble pillars lining his extravagant estate. His collection of rare artifacts, luxury cars, and private jets had made headlines countless times, but none of these treasures held his pride quite like the one that walked and breathed: his lion, Majid. Majid was no ordinary lion. He was massive, his golden mane thick and wild like a crown, forged by the desert winds. His roar could shake windows, and his amber eyes carried the weight of untamed royalty. Vincent loved to show him off. Behind reinforced glass walls and golden cages, Majid lived as a symbol of dominance, a living reminder that Vincent Marlowe could possess anything, even the king of beasts. But the truth was, Majid was not tamed. He wasn't a pet, he was a prisoner. One fateful evening, Vincent threw one of his most lavish parties yet. The courtyard of his estate glowed under crystal chandeliers hanging from towering trees. Politicians, celebrities, and business tycoons gathered, sipping vintage champagne and pretending they hadn't sold their souls for a place at his table. In the center of the courtyard stood Majid, chained by a thick gold collar, his massive head held high despite his captivity. His eyes wandered beyond the party, to the dark horizon where freedom called to him like a forgotten dream. Vincent, standing atop a marble staircase, lifted his glass high for all to see. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, "tonight I make you all a challenge. A fortune awaits anyone brave, or foolish, enough to approach my Majid and lead him away. But I warn you." His smile turned cold. Majid bows to no one. His loyalty is mine alone. There is no man on earth who can tame him. Laughter erupted. Some joked nervously, others avoided looking directly at the lion. Cameras flashed as reporters ate up every second of Vincent's arrogance. But while the rich and powerful celebrated their safe distance, beyond the tall iron gates, someone else listened. A boy. Barefoot, his clothes torn and dust-covered, his face lean but his eyes alive with a quiet fire. Rafi. At only 12 years old, Rafi had lived a life of survival most adults couldn't comprehend. Orphaned, forgotten by society, he roamed the streets, sleeping under market stalls, and surviving on scraps. Yet despite his hardships, there was no fear in his heart, only a quiet, unshakable courage. And as he watched the spectacle unfold from the shadows, something stirred deep within him. He didn't want the millionaire's money. He didn't want glory. But something about the lion, Majid's silent suffering, his longing gaze toward the horizon, called out to him. And that's when Rafi made a decision. Tomorrow, he would walk through those gates, and he would do what no man of power or wealth had ever dared to try. The sun rose over the sprawling estate, its golden light cutting through the early morning haze. While the city slowly came to life, inside Vincent Marlowe's compound, the echoes of last night's lavish party still lingered. Empty champagne glasses on marble tables, crushed petals from extravagant floral displays littering the ground. But beyond the wealth and excess, a storm was brewing. With bare feet brushing against the cool morning dust, Rafi stood before the estate's massive iron gates. He stared up at them, taller than any wall he had ever dared to climb. Behind them lay the unknown, the untamed, the dangerous, and the lion who had called out to something deep inside him. Without hesitation, Rafi found a way in. Years of surviving on the streets had taught him where even the wealthiest men forgot to look. Slipping through a gap near the back perimeter, he moved like a shadow across the grounds, heart pounding but steps steady. He soon found himself in the inner courtyard, the heart of Vincent's empire. And there, chained under a towering acacia tree, stood Majid. The lion was even more magnificent up close. His golden mane caught the morning light, his body a perfect sculpture of raw, untamed power. But it was his eyes that stopped Rafi cold, deep amber, filled with a pain and longing that no cage could hide. Rafi took a slow, careful step forward. Majid lifted his massive head, his piercing gaze locking onto the boys. From the terrace above, unseen by Rafi, Vincent Marlowe stood with his morning coffee, eyes narrowing in disbelief. "Who let that street rat in here?" he muttered under his breath. But curiosity kept him silent. Back in the courtyard, Rafi took another step, then another. The lion's massive paws shifted, his muscles coiled and ready. One wrong move, and this would be over. Rafi didn't flinch. In a voice barely louder than a whisper, he spoke. "I'm not here to hurt you, my king. I'm here to set you free." Majid's ears twitched. His breathing slowed. Rafi extended his small, scarred hand toward the thick golden collar wrapped around the lion's neck, the same collar that symbolized Vincent's dominance over all things living. For a heartbeat, time stopped. And then, against every rule of nature, Majid leaned his great head down, pressing it softly against the boy's outstretched palm. From the balcony, Vincent's cup slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. His worst fear had just come true. Money couldn't buy loyalty, but a pure heart could. Silence settled over the estate like a heavy fog. From the high balconies and shaded corridors, the house staff, the guards, and even Vincent Marlowe himself stood frozen, eyes fixed on the impossible scene unfolding below. Down in the courtyard, Rafi remained still, his small hand pressed gently against Majid's massive head. The lion, feared by all and thought untamable, stood calm beneath the boy's touch. His breathing was steady, his powerful body relaxed, as if, for the first time in years, he felt safe. Vincent leaned against the marble railing, his knuckles white with rage. "This is a trick. It has to be," he growled. But it was no trick. Slowly, Rafi stepped closer, his fingers brushing against the golden collar that had kept Majid chained like a prize for far too long. Up close, he could see how the metal had worn deep grooves into the lion's fur, the marks of years spent in captivity. His heart clenched. "You don't belong to anyone," he whispered, his voice trembling but sure. "And today, you're going free." Majid's deep amber eyes closed, his head tilting forward as if granting the boy permission to do what no one else dared. Rafi's fingers searched for the lock. It was old, ornate, but more importantly, it was rusted from the years of sun and neglect. With determination burning in his chest, he pulled a small pin from his tattered shirt, a survival trick he'd used many times before. Click. The lock gave way. The collar slipped from Majid's neck and fell to the stone ground with a loud, final clatter that echoed across the courtyard like a declaration of freedom. Gasps filled the air. Guards rushed forward, their weapons raised, panic flashing across their faces. But before anyone could act, Majid let out a low, earth-shaking roar that stopped everyone dead in their tracks. And then, in the most astonishing moment of all, the mighty lion turned, not toward the guards, not toward Vincent, but toward Rafi. With a grace that belied his size, Majid brushed his massive head against the boy's shoulder, a silent thank you from a king to the only soul brave enough to treat him like more than a beast. Then, as the rising sun lit the horizon in gold, Majid turned and walked calmly through the open gates of the estate, free at last. The guard stood motionless. Vincent collapsed into a chair, speechless, watching his greatest possession disappear into the wild, led not by chains, but by trust and the fearless heart of a child. As Majid's silhouette disappeared beyond the estate gates, swallowed by the vastness of the savannah, a suffocating silence remained. Vincent Marlowe sat slumped on his marble throne-like chair, his eyes empty, his mind unable to process what had just happened. He had spent a lifetime believing that power meant ownership, that everything, even the wild, could be caged and controlled with enough money. And now, before the eyes of his guests, his staff, and the world, a barefoot boy had destroyed that illusion. "Find that boy!" Vincent suddenly roared, slamming his fist onto the marble armrest. His guards rushed forward, confused and hesitant. They had seen what had just unfolded. The lion had spared the boy, trusted him. Even hardened men who had served Marlowe for years couldn't bring themselves to lay a hand on the child. But orders were orders. Rafi, however, was already gone. He had slipped away from the chaos the moment Majid walked free. His small feet carried him effortlessly through the city's forgotten back alleys, his heart pounding, not from fear, but from the overwhelming reality of what he had just done. For the first time in his life, he had stood before power, and won. Far beyond the city walls, Majid ran free for the first time in years. And even though their paths had parted, Rafi knew that somewhere out there, the great lion roamed wild again. Not as a possession, but as the king he was born to be. But back at the estate, things took a dangerous turn. Vincent Marlowe wasn't just humiliated. He was furious. His reputation, his pride, everything he built his empire on, had been shattered in front of the world. He made a decision. "This boy will pay," he growled. "He thinks he can humiliate me and walk away. Find him, bring him to me." But little did Vincent know, this story was far from over. Because sometimes the smallest voice carries the loudest message, and the world had already begun to listen. News of what had happened at Vincent Marlowe's estate spread faster than wildfire. By nightfall, videos of the moment Majid walked free were all over social media. Headlines screamed the impossible. "Street boy tames a lion, shames a millionaire." "Powerless but fearless, the boy who freed the king of beasts." The footage showed it all. Rafi's calm approach, the lion's gentle submission, the golden collar falling to the stone ground. Across the world, people watched in awe. But in the city's slums and forgotten streets, something deeper began to stir. Hope. For the children who lived invisible lives like Rafi, this was more than a viral moment. It was a message. If one of them could stand before power and walk away victorious, maybe they weren't so powerless after all. But not everyone celebrated. Inside his opulent mansion, Vincent Marlowe seethed with humiliation. He had spent a fortune trying to control the narrative, bribing journalists, threatening news outlets, but the truth was too powerful to contain. His greatest possession had been taken not by force, but by the one thing he could never buy, a pure heart and fearless courage. Unable to bear the disgrace, Vincent took drastic measures. He offered a reward for anyone who could find and capture Rafi. Posters with his face flooded the streets, but Rafi had already become a ghost in the city. Hidden and protected by those who had always lived in the shadows, he became a legend in his own lifetime. People whispered his name with reverence. Mothers told their children about his bravery. The poor and forgotten painted murals of Majid and the barefoot boy who freed him. And then, one evening, something happened that no one expected. A letter arrived at Vincent Marlowe's estate, unsigned and simple. It read, "Your lion was never yours, and neither is your power. You'll never own what truly matters." For the first time in his life, Vincent sat in silence, because deep down, he knew he had lost more than just a lion. He had lost his illusion of control. And as the city prepared for the inevitable collapse of his corrupt empire, somewhere out there, in the wild where he belonged, Majid roared beneath the open sky, free forever. Months passed, but the memory of that day lived on like a flame that refused to die. Rafi had disappeared from the streets, but his story grew larger than life. Across the country and soon the world, his defiance became a symbol. A boy with nothing had humbled a man with everything. And most importantly, he had restored the freedom of a king that should have never been caged. Murals of Majid, the great lion, and the fearless street boy appeared on crumbling city walls and the sides of broken down buses. His story became a song sung by children, a lesson told by fathers who had long forgotten what courage looked like. And while the streets echoed with Rafi's legend, Vincent Marlowe's empire began to fall apart. One by one, his investors pulled away. The press that once praised him turned their backs. Investigations revealed years of cruelty, corruption, and illegal dealings. His estate, once the symbol of untouchable power, became nothing more than an empty monument to pride and failure. And the final blow? One crisp morning, a new foundation was announced: the Majid Freedom Project, dedicated to protecting wild animals from exploitation and rescuing children from the streets. It was backed not by wealth, but by the unstoppable force of people who believed in Rafi's message. A single bronze statue was erected in the city's central square. It wasn't of Vincent Marlowe. It was of a barefoot boy standing calmly beside a great lion, their eyes both fixed on the horizon, free, proud, and untamed. And as legend would have it, on some nights, when the wind was just right, people swore they could hear a lion's roar rolling through the streets, a reminder that true kings don't wear crowns made of gold. They wear hearts forged in courage and leave legacies no cage can ever contain. If this story touched your heart, remember, real power isn't measured by what you own, but by what you free. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this story with someone who believes that even the smallest act of courage can change the world. Together, let's keep these stories of hope alive.